Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Knights, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my stories and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch. And if you're looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today we are doing chapter 7 of Feeling the Way. The flashing lights came on behind me as I entered Pickering. I changed lane to get out of his way, and the car followed me. Resigned, I pulled off to the shoulder, and the OPP car parked behind me. I took off my helmet and watched the squirrel exit the car in my mirror. He strode toward me, his face hard. This was a man on a mission. He took his job seriously. Officer, I greeted him. License and registration, he replied. What is this about? I asked, handing them to him. He looked them over and walked back to his car. I kept watching in my mirror as he scanned my license. This was unusual. Not that I was worried. I wasn't wanted in Canada. I had been driving 20 kilometers over the limit, so I'd probably end up with a speeding ticket. He spoke with someone. I needed to learn to read lips. He stepped out of it. He stepped out of his car, walked to me. I need you to follow me. What's this about? Just follow me and it'll get resolved. Another thing I need to put on my list. Read up on Canadian law. I knew US law. Everyone in my family does to one degree or another. If only from sitting and listening to a lawyer go over how we screwed up. Even when you paid them off, they always want you to know what laws you've broken and how, for some reason. Drove Wade insane after he read the entire law library. I just skimmed it. My license and registration were in his car, so there was no getting it, not unless I wanted to cause a lot of trouble. I looked for some kind of ID I could use when I called his superior. He didn't have any. He didn't have an exposed badge, and his microphone covered all but his initial letter, his first initial, G, and the last letter of his last name, N. It almost felt like he did it on purpose. Lead the way, I told him. Whatever this was about, once we were at the precinct, I could call MM&G, and let them deal with it. After 10 minutes on the 401, I worried. The OPP had to have a precinct around where he stopped me, so why the long ride? If he was going to take me to some central bureau, this was more than a random stop. I primitively placed the call. Malik and Juniper, a female voice answered. How may I direct your call? Gilberto Alvarez, I replied. There was a click. Alvarez, a man said, sounding distracted. Gilberto, Wyatt Orr. Mr. Orr, how can I help you? He was alert now. We've only been dealing with MM&J for 20 years, but in that time, my father had lost it on them often enough they knew to treat us with reverence. MM&J has been the law firm, the law firm the city has used for as long as there has been a society. They've known about magic longer than anyone. They are a lot easier to deal with than the old family firms, since I don't have to dance around any issues. Have any of my brothers screwed up in Canada recently? Not that I'm aware of. I'm checking now. No, there are no Canadian warrants on anyone in your family. Can you see anything that would explain why an OPP officer took my license and is having me follow him to I don't know where? No, sir. As I said, As I said, there is nothing on record pertaining to you or your family that would explain this. I can contact someone within the Canadian judicial system. It might be too recent or something they are keeping off the books, off the records, off the record. Do that and have someone local ready in case I need representation. I'm not liking this. I disconnected. The only thing I could think that might have the Canadian system coming down on me was Aaron's drug running. But as far as I knew, he was careful, and we didn't run anything through Canada because until now we didn't have an entry point we could trust. Yeah. I yeah. I just gave you an indication what part of the an indic. Okay, I just yeah. I just told you what part of the deal with the Carbono involved. Another 10 minutes, and we were exiting on the Don Valley Parkway. Then it was off on Lawrence, heading west. And a few minutes later, the real estate value went way up. What were we doing in a rich neighborhood? We turned on a smaller street, and the visible mansions were even larger and more expensive. He turned into a long driveway, and I followed him, now curious as to what was going on. He stopped just past the walkway to the mansion's door, and I stopped behind him. The squirrel exited the car as the door opened. As the door to the mansion opened, and another squirrel walked toward us. He was older, fit, wearing a light jacket and gray slacks. Thank you, Gary, the man said to the OPP officer. I'll take it from here. Without a word, Gary headed back to his car. I whistled loudly as he was about to close his door. He looked out at me. You leave with my license and I will hunt you down. And the squirrel looked at his elder before doing anything. Please return whatever you took from Mr. Orr, Gary. The man who I now knew was Douglas MacDonald said. Gary handed me my license and registration and went back to his car. Mr. Orr, it is such a pleasure to meet you, the elder said, offering me his hand. He was pleased, although I could tell he was controlling other emotions. I'm Douglas MacDonald. I put my license away, then the registration, before turning to him and ignoring the hand and ignoring it and ignore. I put my license away, then the registration, before turning to him and ignoring and ignored his hand. You never heard of a phone? But it's so easy to ignore a phone call. He replied, the smile not wavering, but his anxiety going up a notch. When I was informed someone from your family was in Ontario, I just had to make sure we got to meet. I'm afraid that the previous time your family came through, my uncle was elder and he wouldn't let us meet any of them. That hadn't been during our family trip to Quebec. We drove through Toronto without stopping. I didn't know of any other trips there, other trips here, but I wasn't told everything. That would be more believable if you'd at least tried to call me. I'm the one guy in my family whose number is online. But if I had, and you decided you weren't interested in meeting, you might have gone through greater length to avoid my grandson. He motioned to the mansion. Why don't we go inside? The weather is mild for us, but I'm sure it'll be more comfortable. I'm sure you'll be more comfortable indoors. Come to my parlor, said the spider to the fly. I considered this an invitation. Of course, this fly had claws. I could turn him down hard, but this could be the innocent I want to get to know you meeting he wanted me to believe it was. I might as well go along until I had a reason to leave forcefully. I grabbed my phone and hooked my helmet to the bike's handle. The mansion was, well, a mansion. Marble floor, high ceiling, wall made of some sort of stone, paintings of family members, exotic trees. Have you eaten? Douglas asked, leading me deeper. Not yet. If he was offering food, I was not turning it down. You're in luck. Nick's on cooking duty today. He makes an amazing lasagna. He opened the door to the kitchen, and a lot of enticing smells escaped. A 20-something squirrel, wearing only an apron, was working dough. I'm pretty sure. Pretty sure this is misspelled. No, maybe not. Yeah. A working doe on the island. Douglas greeted him in the society way, which is to say, hands went where isn't proper in public, and moans and groans were exchanged. Only the younger one did the groaning and moaning as he was careful not to put his dough-covered gloved hands on his elder, although he did kiss him passionately. Nick, say hello to Mr. Orr. Hey, the squirrel said. I nodded in return. Call me Wyatt. I didn't offer my hand to shake or do anything else. Until I knew what this was about, I wasn't getting distracted by the mostly naked squirrel. What do you have in the oven? Douglas asked, reaching for the door. Dinner, Nick answered, putting his tail in his elder's face to move him away. I was hoping to get Wyatt to taste your lasagna. Then he'll have to stay for dinner. If you want lunch, there's soup on the stove. It's been simmering for a few hours. It should be ready. Minestrone, Nick told me. I'm good with soup. There's also bread from last night and cheese in the fridge, if you want that with it. Douglas took bowls from the cabinet. What took you to Quebec, Wyatt? He filled them. Doing the tourist thing, I answered, sitting at the island. What did you think? Quebec is a beautiful city, isn't it? Yeah, I loved walking the old Quebec. There's a lot of history there. Douglas placed a board with a bunch of cheeses. Yes, Quebec is definitely one of Canada's gems. There we go, I thought, popping a piece of cheese in my mouth. Did you have the chance to visit the Frontenac Castle? He asked, putting thick slices of rustic bread on the island. You already know I did, don't you? He shrugged, placing a glass of red wine before me. I'm being polite. You need to work on it. I drank a slice of bread in the soup and ate it. Douglas stiffened. Good bread, I told Nick in the silence. Matt baked it? The young squirrel replied, looking uncomfortable. Let him know it's really good. I ate a spoonful of soup, and the soup's amazing. Nick's ears turned red, but he looked like he wanted to be elsewhere. By the way, Doug, if you want to be polite, you should start by respecting the name of places. It's called Le Chateau Frontenac, not Castle. My name is Douglas, the elder stated, and since you wish to dispense with the pleasantries, maybe you can tell me what René wanted with you. Sorry, family business. Nick looked at me horrified as I dropped pieces of cheese in the soup and swirled them around. Mr. Orr, I don't think you understand the situation. Canada isn't like your country. We aren't a bunch of independent states, each doing their own thing. We are unified. We will not abide Quebec going off in its... They're not looking to separate, I said before spooning a cheese glob into my mouth. The news surprised Douglas. Then why would they want to see you? I shrugged, finishing the bowl and scraping the cheese that ended up stuck on the bottom. Mr. Orr, I can't have you interfering in how my country's run. That's fine. I have no interest in getting in the way. I downed the wine. Douglas looked at me suspiciously. You spent 3 hours in René's office. Don't expect me to believe the two of you didn't reach some form of agreement against me. What do you want, Doug? I speared a slice of cheese with a claw. I want your assurance that you will not get involved in my country's business. That I can't give you. You don't represent all the families in this country. If one of them wants to do business with my family, I will listen and negotiate on my father's behalf. You want to negotiate with us about something? I'll listen. But if you want to get my family to agree to some unilateral action, you're going to have to speak with my elder. Okay. Am I keeping the rest? No, I'm not. Douglas wasn't happy. Are you certain I can't convince you to reconsider your position? Elder MacDonald, I decided to be polite this time. What kind of family would we be if we could be bought? You all seem to forget that we didn't buckle under the great church when all of you cowered from them. You think that if something as paltry as money or favors could sway us, the church wouldn't have found something we wanted they could give us? If you want something from the Carbonneau family, negotiate with them, because my family will not renege on any arrangement we have reached. I popped a last slice of cheese in my mouth as I stood. Nick? The squirrel, startled at being addressed. The soup was really good. I'm sorry I won't be able to stay to taste your lasagna. We are not done, Mr. Orr, Douglas said. We are, Elder. I've told you my position. What you want isn't something I can give you. You need to speak with my father. The Carbonneaux are only one family, Mr. Orr. You'd do well to remember that. I smiled. I will never forget that one family, sufficiently determined, can do what an entire society will not, Elder MacDonald. I turned and left. And that concludes Chapter 7 of Feeling the Way. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter is going to be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, well, that is on my Patreon exclusively at this time. I don't have a plan to publish this elsewhere currently. If you want to listen to this live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time, and that's it. So, I shall wish you a good day.